I'd like to call this meeting of the Boynton Beach Community Redevelopment Agency Board to order. Good evening, everybody, and welcome. Today is Tuesday, May 9th, 2023, and the time is now 6:05 p.m. As always, the same rules of civility and decorum apply. Speakers must first be addressed by the chair and not interrupt a speaker. Public comments must be addressed to the board as a whole and not to any individual on the dais or in the audience. Acts of rudeness, profanity, anything of the sort are strictly prohibited, and disruptive behaviors from the audience are likewise strictly prohibited. Violations of these rules may result in a removal from these chambers, so please govern yourselves accordingly. We're going to begin with our invocation led by Board Member Hay, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance led by Board Member Kelly. Let's all stand for the invocation and Pledge of Allegiance.
Let us pray. Lord, we are meeting here today to conduct matters of business. We ask, Lord, that you guide our hearts and our minds in the spirit of fairness, right thought, and speech. We ask you, Lord, to impart upon us your supreme wisdom, upon our activities, so that our affairs may reach a successful conclusion. Thank you for being our source of guidance today. Bless each member of this CRA board, as well as all the members of our staff. Thank you once again for this opportunity to serve this great city of Boynton Beach. And Lord, we'll be so careful and honored to give you all the praise and all the glory. For it's in your name that we pray. Let every heart say amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. Madam Clerk, if you could please begin the roll call.
Chair Pensurga,
Here.
Vice Chair Turkin is absent. Board Member Cruz is absent. Board Member Hay,
Here.
Board Member Kelly.
Here.
Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you. We're now moving on to agenda approval, additions, deletions, corrections to the agenda. Staff recommends, I agree, that we move up item 15D. This is the MLK Junior Corridor project update, which we normally hear at the end. However, if we move that up right before 13E, that would be a great introduction to the MLK related items on the agenda. So we're going to move up 15D right before 13E as a matter of introduction. And I also want to turn to my colleagues and ask them, of the items under section 15, are there any items you would like to hear today? And we can actually just hear it under announcements and awards, and we can have staff go home if we don't need their presentation.
I don't have any.
Oh, all right. All right. So thank you for the staff that showed up, but we have the information and I appreciate your hard work. Is there anything else for my colleagues? Agenda amendments? Nothing else? We have a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
So moved.
Sorry.
We have a motion and a second. The motion was from Board Member Kelly, second from Board Member Hay. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. Motion passes. Agenda amended. All right, moving on to legal. Good evening, Ms. Rosmel, our counsel for the CRA board. Any updates on the legal front?
Good evening. No updates. Happy May.
All right. Moving on to item 7, informational items and disclosures by board members and CRA staff. Let's begin with Board Member Kelly. And there's only one side. There's only one side to me today. Normally I go back and forth. So Board Member Kelly.
Move on the other side.
That's all right. We'll make it work.
I do not have any disclosures or informational items. Thank you.
Neither do I. Don't have any disclosures.
Happy Mother's Day. It's Sunday. Happy Mother's Day to everyone. Enjoy your Mother's Day on Sunday.
I still have to make up my plans. My
Well,
mom
get
will
on
be very
it.
upset if I don't.
Yeah.
It's going to cost me at least $2.
Inside joke? All right, guys, thank you so much. No disclosures or announcements for myself. We're going to move on to announcements and awards. And our first item here, our only item here, is the Art Walk event. I'm going to have Mercedes introduce the item.
Good evening, Board. Mercedes Coppin, Business Promotions and Event Manager. The CRA will partner with the Boynton Beach Art District for the return of the Boynton Beach Art Walk. The free event will be held on Saturday, May 20th from 6 to 10 p.m. at 410 West Industrial Avenue. We will have free parking available at Palm Beach Eyes. That is located at 640 Boynton Beach Boulevard. Crossing guards will be present at that at the intersection to assist with pedestrian crossings. This event is going to showcase the artists as well as the businesses that operate within the Industrial Craft District. Additionally, we are going to have some live entertainment, including a mobile DJ unit. We'll have some retail, artisan, food and beverage vendors, a pottery craft activity provided by Artsy Living. We'll also have a live canvas painting as well as a mural painting. At this time, we are still accepting applications. Those are being processed directly by the Boynton Beach Art District. If anyone's interested, they can visit their website, boyntonbeachartdistrict.com. Any questions?
No questions for myself. Anything else?
I
Board
just-
Member Kelly.
I just have one quick question. Mercedes, as far as the mural applications, do you know how that's being sent out? Is it just distributed on social media? I've seen it on social media, I've shared it on social media, but are we reaching out to the art schools and seeing if we can get students involved? So what are we doing? And maybe it's more of the art district.
So Rolando Barrero, he oversees the Boynton Beach Art District. He's actually managing that element of the event. I know he shared it on socials. We've cross promoted that as well. And then he's also sent out some email blasts. I'm not sure if he's reached out to the schools. I can certainly ask him. I know we're very close to the end of the school year, so I don't know if that would be like, if it would work out, like, but it would be.
Over the summer.
It would be. Well, he actually wants them to start the mural prior to the event and then complete it during the event. So, but I will speak with him and I'll ask him.
That'd be great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
That was all I had.
All right,
Thank
thank you. And thank you, Mercedes.
You're welcome.
Looking forward to it. Public comments. We're now moving on to public comments. This is a section of the meeting for public comments on items that are not on the agenda. For items on the agenda, the public will be given an opportunity to comment at the item each item is considered. As always, each person has 3 minutes. After we've concluded with all those in the chambers, we'll proceed to those online. And the last person who speaks in the room, that'll be the end at which we'll take digital hands raised. Is there anybody who would like to provide public comment on non-agenda items? All right, seeing none in the room, let's go online. Ms. Kerfman, do we have anybody online with their digital hands raised?
I do not see any hands raised at this time.
All right, thank you for that information. Public comments are now closed, and let me just say, this is the second meeting we've had with no public comments. This is highly unusual, or at least the general public comments. We're moving on now to consent agenda. Are there any items under consent that my colleagues would like to pull? Anything from either of you?
I'd like to pull item 10D.
10D, okay. And is that it? All right, let's have a motion to approve the remainder of consent agenda. We have that motion.
So moved.
We have a motion from Board Member Kelly. Is there a second?
Second.
And there is a second. All those in favor of approving the remainder of consent agenda say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. Motion passes unanimously. Now let's address item 10D. This is termination of the commercial rent reimbursement grant program in the amount of $31,500 for the Coffee and Ale Exchange LLC, doing business as Bond Street Ale and Coffee, located in Casa Costa at 400 North Federal Highway. Ms. Bonnie Nicklin, would you like to introduce the item?
Sure. Good evening, Board. Bonnie Nicklin, Grants and Project Manager. This is a follow-up to the extension you gave the tenant prior, or the applicant back in February. If you recall, that agenda item had several extensions, and the board decided to give one final extension. They did not meet the deadline, so therefore their grant was terminated, and the balance of the grant was forfeited for the property improvements. So this grant will also be terminated is what staff is recommending, but that does not mean that the applicant cannot come back and reapply once they're actually open and operating. This way the funds can be reallocated back into the budget for other uses that have, a need right now.
Very good. That was part of my question, whether or not they could come back.
Yes.
And reapply, or if they have someone in mind who meet the criteria, they could pass it on to them, or
We wouldn't pass it on, but they could certainly come and apply directly for the
Apply.
grants. The funding would be available. So, and I've communicated with the applicant that this does not mean they cannot come back. We just recommend that they wait until they're open and operating.
there would be no gain in terms of the selling price if it were to go that route. I mean, right now versus then, the price tag is higher, right?
Well, this is for rent, so they will max out the rent grant at $1,750 a month for the first 12 months of business. So it's not the property improvement grants. The rent grant will be maxed out and they can apply for that full amount.
So you're saying that the same amount
Mhm.
that the previous would pay, the next one would do the same thing?
Correct. And they can apply.
If they qualify.
Mhm. Yeah, if they qualify, and they can apply anytime during their first year. So it's not like a super hard deadline for them. They'll have a very flexible year to apply.
Can you share with us if we don't have any takers yet because it's too early, right?
I still have several in the pipeline. So, the funding will be used for sure. I mean, I don't doubt that for future businesses. Mhm.
Thank you
Mhm.
for clearing that up.
Sure.
All right, thank you. Board member, anything else?
That was my question too, so.
All right, great. Questions have been addressed. We have a motion to approve item 10D.
So move.
We have a motion from Board Member Hay and a second from Board Member Kelly. All those in favor of approving item 10D say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? The ayes have it. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, board.
Good evening. That concludes consent agenda. We're now moving on to 12 CRA Advisory Board. They do have a pending assignment. I was informed that they did not have quorum last meeting and that conversation was never had. Executive Director, was there anything else to add to that?
No, sir.
All right, thank you. Anything from my colleagues?
What is the quorum number? Is it 4?
It was 4 out of 7.
It didn't have quorum. Okay.
Right. We had it, but because of illness, one of the board members didn't make it. So emergency type of thing. So.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. We are now at 13 old business. Item 13A, discussion and consideration of draft scope to amend the 2016 Community Redevelopment Plan. This was something that we previously discussed. We asked the CRAB board to also provide feedback. They hadn't met, so we don't have feedback yet. Pretty much that's where we are on this item. I recommend that we table this after the CRAB board has had the ability to weigh in or the opportunity to weigh in, but that's my recommendation.
I agree with your recommendation. So
All right. So
motion to table.
we have a motion to table and we have a second. The motion came from Board Member Hay. The second came from Vice Chair Turkin. All those in favor of.
Board Chair, apologies, could you put a date on that?
Well, it's hard to until we know absolutely when we'll have that meeting, the CRAB board meeting.
Okay, can we do no later than 3 months so we have a hard date and then we can pull it early?
All right.
Okay, thank you.
You made the motion, Board Member Hay. Would you mind tacking on the 3 month? No later than 3 months?
Why 3 months?
Just for tabling, we should assign a date to it for purposes of the agenda. And since we don't know when the CRAB board meeting will be, I assume that 3 months would give it enough time. You can,
Maybe we say no
Do-
later than
And
3
what-
months?
or you can do it until next month and then pull it off the table and retable it again, but we should assign a date to it when we table it. So if you want to just push it to next month, you may know when the meeting will be at that
I
point.
would prefer to do it that way.
Okay.
I mean, what happens if after 3 months, they don't? Where we go then? We just table it again? Just keep tabling until the cows come home?
Well, that will be your choice. I mean, at this point, perhaps it would be easiest to recommend to table it until next month.
I would just rather do it a month at a time and have staff inform the members the urgency of this, and we want them to meet and deal with this. So I would not be in favor of the 3 months.
So that'll be your June 13th meeting, but
Yes.
just as an FYI, there are 4 board members that will maybe be reappointed. However, the previous board members are allowed to serve until they're replaced. So
All right, Board Member Hay, just to be clear, your motion is to table this item until the next meeting. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right, can we have that second again, just for clarity's sake? Board Member Turkey?
Second.
Oh, all right, we have a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. This item is now tabled up until next meeting. Thank you. Item 13B, discussion and consideration of the responses to the RFQ for the CRA-owned property located at 401-411 East Point Beach Boulevard. Executive Director, if you could introduce this item.
sure, I'm going to pass that to our Assistant Director,
Okay.
Mr. Tim Tack.
Good evening, board. Let's see here. The CRA received a letter of intent from the U.S. Post Office back in June of 22. Due to the pending sale of the current USPS location at 217 Northeast Seacrest Boulevard, the USPS needs to relocate its retail operation and express the importance of maintaining a retail component east 95 in the downtown area. The USPS LOI, or letter of intent, proposed that the CRA issue a request for proposals, request for qualifications to qualified parties to purchase the CRA-owned parcels and construct a freestanding building, which the USPS will lease on a long-term basis. The construction would include 3,400 square foot retail post office with 22 parking spaces. In response to that RFQ, we have 2 proposals, one from BTH Development Partners and one from SAW Commercial Investment LLC. The RFQ document listed site plan requirements, the mission requirements, and evaluation and selection requirements. CRA staff has completed review of each of the proposals for sufficiency, adherence to the RFP and RFQ requirements, financial components, and other evaluation criteria as attached in attachment 6 and 7. The USPS provided a request for additional information from both of the proposers. They were looking for additional information to compare both proposals equally. Back in April, the USPS provided their bid comparison of the RFI response from both developers. USPS stated they are committed to the project and are willing to work with the requirements of the CRA to develop the property. However, they are rejecting both proposals as non-viable and cannot work with the proposals as provided. In accordance with Section 13 of the RFP-RFQ, the proposers will present their proposals and their PowerPoint slide presentations before the BBCRA board at the regular scheduled meeting tonight. Also, in the selection of the successful proposer, the board will consider all proposals that meet the minimum submission requirements for review. The BBCRA staff will review the advisory board recommendation and any other relevant data. At the conclusion of the presentation, a proposer may be selected by the board. However, the board is under no obligation to select a proposer regardless of their ranking and can, at its sole discretion, opt to terminate the process or continue to process at a subsequent meeting. If the board elects to hear from the proposers, each proposer developer will provide a brief presentation of their development for the proposals.
Thank you, Mr. Tack. Let me just begin by saying that based on my conversations with our staff, it appears that there is insufficient information for us to move forward at this time. That is my take, and I am interested in hearing the presentation tonight. However, any new information that just comes to light just as the presentation is given, I would require that our staff has the time to provide additional analysis on any new information. So I'd love to hear the presentation. However, I want to make sure that we're making the right decision and our due diligence is done. And so either way, I'm not prepared to move forward, but that's my position right now. All right. Let's hear from my colleagues. Let's begin with my right side this time, Vice Chair Turkin.
Thank you, Chair. Tim, when you said that the post office said these bids were not viable, can you elaborate? Does that have to do with cost?
Well, it is cost related, but in regards to BTH development, they were concerned that didn't follow the postal direction in regards to the site plan and layout. They didn't provide a transparent development cost estimate, and their proposed rent is not fair and reasonable based on the market.
Okay.
And in regards to SAW or SAW development, they didn't provide a transparent development cost estimate and did not provide a rental stream.
So there's more that we need to kind of look at this time. So I'm gonna roll with you, Chair, on this one. I'd like to wait till we have all the information and give an adequate amount of time to staff.
All right, sounds good. Board Member, hey.
I agree with you, Chair. Okay. I mean, if they want to do the presentation, fine, but I want the opportunity to study it and staff to have an opportunity to look at it.
All right, Board Member Kelly.
I am kind of it's my understanding the U.S. Postal Service is rejecting these. Are we saying that we're giving the two potential developers a chance to, I mean, that as far as I understand from talking to staff, they've been communicating and working with staff to try and figure out if they can bridge the gaps and make it work. And at this point, the Postal Service is saying, no, is that not accurate, Tim? I guess, I mean, what is the, I guess what are we expecting to continue negotiating, I guess, or continue, what new information are we expecting to receive, or are we expecting that will change?
We're not anticipating any additional information or changing. The way that it's been presented to the USPS at its current, the way it's laid out now is not acceptable. They're not going to be able to work with that as a tenant.
Right. So I guess my question, and maybe this is to my colleagues, is what are we doing? I mean, it's my understanding the U.S. Postal Service is saying that these aren't going to work. If we reject these proposals and we start over again, does that bar these developers from having a second bite at the apple? They can come back, they can look at all the recommendations, and they can come back and see if they can do a new proposal that works for the post office. Is that accurate?
That is correct. And to the extent that the CRA is going to be adjusting the standards by which everyone is operating, it would be more clean to reject the proposals and put a new RFP rather than sort of negotiate with the two that are before the board at the moment.
Right. So,
to be clear, to answer your question, there's nothing that would prohibit them from applying again if they desired to.
So I guess my next follow-up question is, in the difference of rejecting and kind of starting fresh, or putting this off potentially to get a potential new information, or whatever gets gleaned out of these presentations, if we hear them and there's new information and then staff has to review them. I mean, what are we looking at as far as timing difference? If we start over again and we resend out the RFP, as opposed to, I mean, we could hear the presentations and maybe we'll hear a little bit more information, and that may still not work for the post office. And so then we're coming back and having to make this decision again. So I'm just wondering if it's proactive for us to do that, or if it makes more sense to start over again. But those are kind of my thoughts. Is I'm just wondering, timing wise, is there a reason why we would hear the presentations and then ask the post office if they can work? I mean, I just am trying to understand why we're discussing it this way.
You go ahead.
Obviously, if there are new information introduced here, we will have to review it with the post office. So that's yes, you're right, that it may prolong the process a little more. As far as going out again, it's really up in the air because usually it takes us about 3 months average to get if there are viable responses, that's an agreement with what the CRA would want for a goal. In this case, we have another party that we have to, there's strict regulation they need to comply with. So give or take 3 or 4 more months to go out again, if we are able to get new interested parties, and we may, I'm not sure. You can also direct us to also look at different outlets, take the time to look at who else does this kind of thing. Again, we're at your discretion what you want us to do, but there's different ways to do that, or even evaluate with the attorney what other means to do it for the goal of working within the year timeframe that we have at the post office.
Yeah, I mean, I guess just my concern is we put this off, or we hear the presentations, then we're talking to the post office about different potential changes or not, or things that they may agree to or may not. And then we're a month, then we're starting over again in a month or so. So I guess those are just kind of my thoughts is, if the post office is saying these don't work as they are right now, then what are we hoping to glean?
Board member, just very quickly, are you suggesting just to keep this clean, let's just altogether reject, start anew, and then we'll hear the presentations after all the information has been submitted, vetted, and all of that? Is that what you're suggesting?
That's what I'm saying. I mean, I just feel like we're wasting everyone's time if we listen to the proposals, and the US Postal Service has said that they're not going to work for them. But that's my thought.
Understood. And I would be comfortable with that. Just to make this move faster, we can just reject, republish, take in all the applicants all at the same time. They can still resubmit and so on. All right. Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair. This is for staff. Is it within our scope to just hire a GC and get this project done? Is that an option?
CRAs are very limited in what they can do. The statute doesn't provide clear direction that would clearly authorize a CRA to just build a building and then own it and lease it out as it desired. If you'd like, we can look into all of the options available to that. It is not clearly outlined in statute that that's permitted. I would like the opportunity to do a little more research on it before I would give you a really firm answer on it. But typically the CRA itself would not act as the general contractor.
Okay. We would obviously set that out. Would that, would you guys be okay with exploring that option while we postpone everything?
So Vice Chair, we may not be the general contractor, but we can certainly be a coordinator of sorts.
Correct.
That is one possibility. I know I've had those discussions with staff.
Mhm.
It is something I'm open to.
Okay.
This project is at a scale where I believe it is something that we could manage. But I didn't want to jump on that boat right away until we see all of our options. But I am open.
Okay.
All right. Executive Director, it looked like you're about to say something.
We have other options we can explore. Like I said, with legal staff, we have other things like invitation to bid when an RFP may not, be the right one. So we can certainly meet with our legal counsel and see what other options to bring it back to the board rather than just going out and getting the same, maybe lack of, or, you do have a chance of getting more, but, we can explore what other avenues to go through.
So let me follow that up by asking, and this is for both of you, Executive Director and Council, could you get all that information in by next meeting?
Certainly. So I believe what you're asking for us is to provide you with a list of options of how to move this project forward? Yes.
That's right.
Okay, we could certainly provide that by
And
next
also any legal
meeting.
constraints we may have in executing those options.
We could certainly provide that by next meeting.
All right, excellent. Anything else from my colleagues? So we've thrown ideas around. We haven't made a decision yet. So I haven't heard from you, Board Member Hay.
No, Mike, I agree with what you're saying. My concern is just, I just not convinced of the commitment level, so I just assume the RFP, but I want to look at the options that been mentioned here and explore that so that I can be a little more convinced, because I'm not there yet. Because there's a lacking here. I'm not sure they're not committed to the level that I would like to see. So I'm open for additional exploring the options.
All right. So regardless of how we proceed forward, I think one thing is clear. The current applications as they stand are insufficient. And I think the prudent thing to do would be to reject them for now. And then next meeting, we will assess what our options are, whether we republish an RFP or we proceed in some other direction. Council, would you like to chime in on that?
I would just like to be very clear when you say for now, if you elect
not
to
for
reject
now.
the
Let's
bids, it
remove
would be
that.
a final
They are-
rejection. Okay.
All right, why
I just
don't
wanted to
you word the motion so we don't get that wrong?
If I'm understanding the board's intent, it is to reject all bids. So you could simply make a motion to reject all bids. And then following that, you can direct us as staff to bring you back with the options by consensus. So motion to reject all bids.
All right, is there that motion?
So move.
Second.
We have a motion from Vice Chair. I don't know where the second came from. Maybe Board Member Hay, whoever said it first. All right, was that clear? All right. All those in favor? Aye. All those oppose? All right, the ayes have it. The motion passes.
And we will take by consensus your direction to bring back to you next month all of the options available for development of the site.
Thank you. We'll make that.
Yeah, he is correct. Public comment is appropriate.
Thank you. I'm Michael Winder for the record. And if the other team should have a point of order, of course, the microphone's available. It's the only time I can ask this question. I am part of one of the teams that made the bid. So is the cone of silence over?
The cone of silence will be, yes, I mean, after the meeting has passed, although I will apologize to the board. I did not recommend that you take public comment before making the motion. So perhaps we
I
walk
wouldn't
that
have known
back.
anyways until it was made, but that's fairly important to the bidders to know that for certainty at a public meeting. So if you might, is it over or not? Or if it isn't over, when is it over? Thank you. I'll back away. I just need that.
I'm a little confused.
Okay. So I believe in a number of these circumstances where there are competing presentations, you will ask the other proposers to leave the room to sort of preserve that. And then the cone of silence also relates to the way that the members of the proposing teams are able to communicate with the council. I believe that we should reopen the motion to allow for public comment on all of the things. You may close your cone of silence at this point open your cone of silence at this point if you like and allow them to hear each other, or you may proceed at the normal way and ask them to leave the room while the other person is presenting, if that is what you would like to do.
So, Council, my understanding is this body doesn't want to hear the presentations, and we'll make a decision whether or not to republish, at which time they can still apply at our next meeting. That was my understanding. So I didn't see a need for that where they need to step out, because I didn't see a general consensus on hearing presentations today. But I agree, let's have the public comments. Do you need us to restate the motion at all, or we'll just proceed to public comments?
As you all approved the motion, you may all, if one of you could make a motion to rescind that motion, accept public comment, and then we'll proceed after you have public comment to readopt a motion of your choosing.
So move.
All right, the motion was to rescind the previous motion. We have a motion here from Vice Chair. I heard a second from Board Member Kelly. All those in favor to rescind the previous motion, say aye.
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 Aye. All those who oppose, the ayes have it. Motion passes unanimously. The previous motion has been rescinded. We're now going to first entertain public comments on this item. Let's do that first. If you would like to speak specifically on these items, again, this is item 13B. Now is the time to approach the podium. After the in-person has spoken, we'll proceed.
And to be clear, you are allowing all of the potential proposers to stay in the room for each other's discussions, as I understand is what you're saying.
Because we're not hearing the presentations. That was my understanding.
Right, but they're going to come comment, and so they're going to come provide comment, I believe.
What is the best procedure here to take?
Allow me one moment to review what you have in your actual RFP, but it at this point will be board preference. I mean, there's been public records materials placed on this.
Might be better to have them leave.
So yeah, that was my, we can do that out of abundance of caution. My confusion is just the presentations are already attached, in which case it's public record, so everybody sees it. That
Yeah, oh, it's been
If-
30. Oh, that's right. We got them. I forgot that we got them. I apologize. We received these, we received them a couple of months ago. So actually, they are all public records at this point. The cone of silence relating to contact is typically ends after 72 hours after you all provide your notice of intended award. However, that is yours to waive if you choose. So in other words, you could allow them to contact you and speak to you. Here, so if you want to hear them, you can hear them. You
Yes.
just, okay.
Okay.
If you all could have just,
We are taking public comment on this item. Let's just proceed. Okay. If anybody would like to speak on this item, please approach the podium, state your name for the record.
Hi, Brian Hussey with BTH Development Partners, one of the proposals submitted for the downtown USPS process or post office. The reason we came out tonight was to offer further clarification rather than new information. We feel that the post office interpretation of the package that we sent was not fully reviewed or understood because the main rejection components being both the cost and the site plan. The reason the site plan changed from what was provided in the RFP was our architect took a detailed look at what would actually work on site and work with the code. And believe it or not, it was within 25 square feet of what was proposed. So we felt it was a pretty good job of maintaining the original programming. And as far as the cost proposal, this was a RFQ, qualifications as well as proposals. The difficulty in holding a firm cost proposal from November to May during this time with interest rate hikes is just, infeasible. We tried to demonstrate in our proposal with a very detailed budget, it was over 30 pages of data line by line into the construction costs and trying to show a very transparent projection on what the rents would be. And when we did that for the 10-year lease, those rents happened to be within what was market rate for a standalone new construction. So, on that, we only wanted the opportunity to present on our qualifications, understanding this process could take many more months, a lot could change in the market, and offer only the best, most transparent data for the board and the tenant to review and to make an assessment if a brand new post office is really what they need or what they can afford, or if they're better served finding a smaller, alternate location. That's all.
All right. Anything else?
Again, Michael Weiner on behalf of SAW. I was really trying to make this simple. All I wanted to know was that for certainty, we could go and talk to you individually after this was over so that there would be no ethics difficulties whatsoever. I actually agree with the other team that's presenting. We are both facing the same set of problems. I would point out to you, having been the landlord for a post office locally for more than a decade, I have some experience with them, and we're both facing the same situation. The post office is asking for everything and actually giving you little more than what they are thinking about, not what they really want to do. You take a look at it, rent proposed by them, maybe they were just filling it in, was $0 for 6 months and $1 thereafter. That's not a good thing to look at when you take a look. They're asking you to commit to a purchase price, to a cost, but they don't want to say anything about it. The $85 was surprising, but actually it's not unexpected when the post office is also saying you must take care of everything. You've got to go in, you've got to do our pest control, you've got to clean our parking lot. On a 3,200 and some odd square foot building that's standalone, this should be a much more simple situation that would allow them to come in and operate. I'm hoping, no one wants to see the post office go away, obviously, but they do have form leases that allow for a different kind of operation, especially in a standalone building of this size. And we need to deliver a message. On the off chance that I was not allowed to say that to you because for some reason the cone of silence still remains, I at least wanted to say it at the microphone. I think you're going to be hitting up against this barrier no matter how many times we do a proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, seeing no one else in the audience for this item, Ms. Kerfman, is there anybody online for this item?
Yes, I have 2 hands raised. Mr. Grant, I will unmute you. You are muted.
Hello, this is Stephen B. Grant. Can you hear me?
Yes, please begin.
Thank you. I use the post office regularly. As my profession as attorney, I have to go send mail by certified USPS. And, you know, one of the things I've been speaking with a couple of the post office workers, and one of the things is that this new site did not allow for distribution, did not allow for a huge truck that normally comes into the old site. I believe there's other properties on this that the CRA has, the existing site being one of them, where we can still have a distribution site, because one of the things that the distribution site allows is for better delivery for all of the people and businesses that are in the CRA. So when you have an opportunity to look at that and speak with the USPS again, see if they can afford another distribution site to replace the one that they are trying to get rid of. So that would be my 2 comments. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Ms. Kerfman, let's go to the next person.
Mr. Miller, you are unmuted.
Hello, can
Mr.
you hear me
Steve
okay?
Miller?
Yes, please begin when you're ready and state your name for the record.
Okay. Sure, my name is Steve Miller, and I work in the buildings just north of the proposed location at 401, 411 East Boynton Beach Boulevard. And looking at the designs of the post office, it does not appear that a truck would be able to back into the location for the loading dock that the initial drawings were, and could present problems for other trucks backing into other designs as well. We own the easement that goes to the fence on the north side of the property there. There are utility poles. We make use of that property, so I don't think that would work out very well. I looked around the area and found a location down at 225 West Boynton Beach Boulevard that I believe is owned by the CRA also. Another benefit for the 225 West Boynton Beach location is that within a quarter-mile radius, there are over 300 residences, versus at the 401, 411 East Boynton Beach Boulevard that the contractors are looking at now, there are only about 100 residences, because most of the area around there is commercial. So I think this would be a much better location for the local community to have easy access to the post office. Also, there is a property across the street that is vacant at this time also, that would provide for parking, which would allow you to have a post office that would have greater capabilities than what you are looking at the current smaller location at the 401, 411 address. So I wanted to bring those to your attention. I hope you receive some drawings and photographs that I put together for you, and that you would consider this in the future, because I think the further west location would be much better for multiple reasons. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Ms. Kerfman, just to confirm, that was the last speaker?
That was the last hands raised, yes.
All right, public comments on this item is now closed. Is there any further discussion from my colleagues? All right, so the original motion was to reject the bids. This is again item 13B, reject all bids. May I have that motion?
So move.
We have a motion from Vice Chair Turkin. Is there a second? The second came from Board Member Hay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. Motion passes, and all of the bids have been rejected. Again, next meeting, staff will come to us with all of our options, in which case, at that point, we will make a decision on how we'll proceed, whether or not to republish. If we do republish, all the applicants are still able to apply with all of the information already provided and all the details, not just analyzed, but have all those kinks worked out so everything's ready to go. All right, Vice Chair.
Before we get on to the next item, 13, Charlie, I was a little late, so I just want to disclose I did speak with Mr. Anthony Barber
Okay.
in regards to this item. And then if it's okay with my colleagues, I would like to add something on a future agenda item in regards to the homing in. I know that in our budget, we look at some exterior improvements. There's a line item there. And so I'd like staff to look at how we can assist that project. I know there's new ownership there and they've got some permits pulled for the interior. And if you guys know the homing in, it's been very problematic in respect to public safety here in the east side for quite some time. So I'd like to see what staff can do to assist those new landowners.
You are correct. There's a line item, but it's not just for the homing in. So I would probably seek board input on how to utilize that for exterior improvement. As I know, we usually will not approach the owner.
What does that process look like?
Well, because the owner has specific requirements for how they operate, and we can follow up with you later, but usually they would come to us with a request for assistance, and they would probably give us what they want to do, whether they want to do exterior improvement or if they want to build new structures or demolish structures. So we would have to do that to look at what is it that the gap that they would need, and then again to see what line item can be used for that. So I would, definitely we could have our staff reach out to those owners as well to see what their plans are, because the funding that we have may not meet their what they want to do. So I just hate to just offer that without knowing what it is that they need,
right,
and how we can fill that gap.
So is staff comfortable, as long as my colleagues are comfortable, to move in that direction? Or do we want to bring it back for discussion?
Executive Director, if you could finish, it sounded like you were...
Yeah. No, I would at least maybe reach out to them and see what their plans are, if the board would like direct us to do that, and then how we can fund it. It could be a number of funding that could be available, not just that amount. But I'd like to know what their plans are and how we can help and what the gap may be. That would probably be the proper way versus saying we have money here and use that, because it may not be enough for that line item.
So Vice Chair, my recommendation is, it sounds like there's more research to be done. They need to reach out to them and get whatever information is needed. My recommendation is, if there's consensus in the board, we direct staff to do just that. But I don't see a reason to amend the agenda until that information does come back.
Perfect.
All right. Do we have consensus on this direction?
Yes.
All right. All right. Anything else?
No, thank you, Chair.
No. Absolutely. We're now going to move on to item 13C. This is the project update of the purchase and development agreement with 306 Northeast 6th Avenue LLC for the CRA-owned property located at 211 East Ocean Avenue. This was previously tabled. So first things first, is there a motion to remove this item from the table?
So moved.
We have a motion from Board Member Kelly and a second from Board Member Hay to remove item 13C from the table. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. This item has been removed from the table. Executive Director, if you could introduce the item, then we'll hear from the applicant.
Sure. This item before you was an update of the purchase and development agreement with 306 Northeast 6th Avenue LLC for the property known as 211 East Ocean Avenue, which has been referred to in the past as the Magnuson House. So at the March 9th meeting, the CRA board approved a purchase and development back in a year ago, over a year ago. We executed a purchase and development agreement with Mr. Anthony Barber and his partner to redevelop the site for a container restaurant concept. As part of the requirements, Mr. Barber and his partner needed to submit a site plan application through the city by January 16th, 2023. The time has lapsed, and in February of this year, the board had given Mr. Barber 3 months to report back to see the progress of submission. Since then, there's been a question whether or not there's the process, the application, a minor site plan modification or a major site plan modification. To note as a historical update of this site was previously approved for a restaurant, an adaptive reuse of the historical Maxon House to a restaurant. That was the latest site plan that was approved at the city. From what I understand, I did speak to city staff, Ms. Amanda Radigan, who's the plan zoning director, because this concept involves a different type of construction, which is a shipping container concept that you see elsewhere around in some of the downtown areas, that would require a additional review with the community design appeals process, and that would trigger a major site plan application, site plan modification application. So with that, I believe I did speak briefly to Mr. Barber about this, and all we ask is the board is considering the requested time extension on this, that it also includes additional time for him to not go through the site plan, but also building permits and whatever site development that's needed for this process. So there are certain milestones that's in the purchase and development agreement that dictates not just site plan approval, but other requirements that need to be done. And to note, the basis for the purchase and development agreement is that if the land right now or in the past year has been valued at $897,000, the board had approved that the land be turned over for this concept as long as $1 million worth of improvements be put on the site to activate this use. So what the board really wanted to do was to make sure that the site can be, there are no obstacles, that the site can be developed as such use. There are other clawbacks in the purchase and development agreement that I'd be more than happy to talk about, but that's really the gist of it, that if he can do the improvement on that, instead of buying or instead of asking for TIF or grants, that he could have the land in return for the improvement that's put in there. So.
Thank you. Ms. Shutt, a couple of questions just to start the discussion. Number one, just to be clear, you're saying that if we were to give an extension, then every other timeline, or what's
should
the
be
proper
adjusted
term? Timeline, everything will be shifted over. So we're going to have to make that amendment in the agreement. My next question is, what is a reasonable duration for this extension, and how? And actually, the more important question is, why do we need an extension? Let's begin with that, so we address the underlying issue, and then we can assess what is a reasonable time for an extension.
And the reason probably I would have to defer to Mr. Anthony Barber for that. But again, to prepare a site plan, back to your question, to prepare a site plan application with materials, it could be as quick as a month to 2 months, depending on your consultants you hire, obviously. If somebody does it, that's familiar with the process, the city's requirements, application, they can easily put one together. And it all depends on the cost also. If it's a bigger firm, obviously overhead's more, right? And you would it could be anywhere from 4 months also to prepare drawings and filling out applications and things like that, getting traffic reports or just analysis or statement. So with that, anywhere between 1.5 months to 4 months would be a reasonable time.
All right, thank you. Let's turn it over to Mr. Barber. Good evening and welcome.
Good evening, Anthony Barber, owner of Troy's Barbecue Points Beach. Pleasure to see you all again so well. As far as the update of the project is concerned and why we would need an extension, I'm of the understanding that it can be located within the minutes that the previous board may have made a recommendation or made an agreement based on the fact that we were going for a minor site plan application. Minor site plan modification application. Okay. So in the time since you last saw me, not necessarily spoke to me, I'm pretty sure that's the last time you saw me, Mayor Prince Ergo, was when I was leaving the CRA office and we were initiating the determination of whether or not we needed a major site plan application or a minor site plan application. Ms. Shutt actually today just got that answer from, well, I believe it was today. I can't say when, but within the last 2 days. Today is Tuesday. I think I spoke to her last Tuesday, as a matter of fact. So at least within the last 7 days, she got that answer from Ms. Radigan about what would be required. So as of this point, I've been kind of sitting saying, do I go right? Do I go left? When we made the initial agreement, I made that agreement based on the terms of this is a minor site plan modification application. So there's a huge difference in cost, for one, and requirements. So I understand that there are things that haven't been done in the city of Boynton Beach, and in this arena at the CRA meeting, that probably wouldn't be where that's determined. It would probably be at a commission meeting, and I'm happy to plead my case in that form as well. But I do believe with strong conviction that the agreement was made with minor site plan modification application as the term, because it had already been approved, as she said, as a restaurant use. Now, everything that the planning and zoning official said is probably true. I don't know building code. That's not my arena. But at the same time, I believe at the time where this was approved, we might have had a different building official. So to have a different purview based on someone else that may now be sitting in the chair kind of imbalances the scales a tad bit for us as a business, let's say. So asking for time is based on the fact of, I do want to actually lobby for the fact of what we agreed on. That was what I believe was agreed on. So that has to be reviewed and found within the minutes. And if that's even possible, I'm not even sure. But to a certain degree, the goalpost has changed a bit. So it kind of says, okay, well, now that we do need this, or we don't need this, or do we need this, or do we not need this? And this has been kind of an ongoing thing. It's kind of like if we sit here, the four, you all on the dais, and you tell me one thing, but then I go and I meet with city staff, and then they say, well, that's cool that they told you that, but this is what it is. That is essentially kind of what happened. And then we kind of snowballed. And then one person on the party said, hey, man, when we were in the meeting, they said minor site plan modification application. So that's where I am.
Thank you. Very briefly, then I'll turn to my colleagues. Ms. Shutt, can you confirm that that is indeed the case, that Ms. Radigan only gave you that information very recently?
I confirmed her verbally just recently. Yes.
Okay.
We had sent emails. There was an email chain. Pardon me for interrupting. There was an email chain, and it's from, let's say that's from right after you saw me. But there's a question in there that asks, does this need right? Does this need left? And that was just clearly skipped. That's evident. You can get a copy of that. So she just got, Ms. Shutt recently just verbally confirmed when that recently.
Thank you. I'm just trying to ascertain the reason for the delay, and I think I understand what's been said. Let's turn now to my colleagues for input. Board Member Kelly, let's begin with you.
I guess my only question, Anthony, is I am fine. I feel like this is on city staff's and sounds more like a communication or a crossing of whatevers, and depending on certain prior conversations. So I'm not going to call anyone out or say it's any one person's in one person's lap, but it sounds like there was just a site plan was approved. we went along with that understanding and there was a mix.
No, I think, again, for staff to fully have reviewed this, they would have to have a complete application. And at that time, in all honesty, in Ms. Radigan's defense, a community design appeals board is not just staff internally. They'd have to review all the justification, all the narrative to that. So that's why they're not able to do that. So I'm just saying that worst case scenario, you have to do a major site plan modification. And how do we give them enough time to do what they need to do, hire the consultant that's needed, and then to make sure that once that gets approved, to go forward for the building permit. So that I'm looking forward and making sure that we guide him in the right direction.
Right, no, and I'm not talking about forward. I'm okay with giving an extension. I think that this is outside.
Right.
You know, at this point, you know, the first extension was, you know, you were learning and it was a learning curve. And so now I feel like cities kind of has, you know, hopefully we're on the right track. I guess my question to you is, are you still in it? I mean, are you still committed? Because now we're talking about if it's a major site plan, there's other funding involved, there's different circumstances. I mean, if you're committed and you're still on the right track and you and your partner are still in it, you know, I want to make sure that you're committed and in it. I mean, you've come this far. I assume that you are, but I want to hear it from you and just what you're.
Can I just follow up on that? Thank you so much for that question. But not just Mr. Barber, but also he does have a partner. And I know he's not here today, but we need to hear that. It's a joint venture, right?
It's a joint venture. One major piece of the company is no longer with us in human form anymore, in earthly form anymore. So that kind of threw a wrench in why my partner, like he wanted to be here tonight, but now he's taking on some other major responsibilities. No, not that.
Is that what you meant?
No, it's a financial component, a partner, right?
When you said not earthly, that's
Yes.
Someone, yeah.
That's true.
No, but
anyways, go ahead.
Yeah, so that kind of changes not funding, but the path of how we run the business a certain way, so to speak. So was that your?
Yes, it's been answered. No, it was.
Am I fully vested into the project? Yes. However, we are fully vested into the project under the premise of what we agreed on or agreed here on, so to speak. So we want to figure out what's required because there's genuinely about $100,000 difference in what we agreed on and what we may have to do.
And in all honesty, just as to clarify, the site plan modification is a one meeting, really. You have to get your stuff together. You don't have to go for a rezoning. There's no conditional use. You just have to get your site plan the way that it meets code and the way Mr. Barber would plan to program the site, you know, how to operate the site. So it's not a big overwhelming, but it is for him because he's got to have the consultants, the engineer, the architects, the people to do the work. And that is out of pocket for him. So.
And that would, not to say that that's outside of the scope of what we can do, but as it stands right now, if we were to move forward under the premises that we were attempting to operate under, we would almost be done, as opposed to what you're asking me where you're saying how much more time is needed. Now you're much further back essentially from finishing the project. So yeah, that's that.
So in essence, you can't waive the requirement as a CRA board. He still has to go through the process.
All right, understood. Board Member Kelly, any follow-up questions?
No, I just want to make sure that, you know, we're still on the same page. You're still on the right track. What happens if a major site plan application is required? Is that going to affect your progress forward?
What I don't think it would completely derail us, but there would be some requests of concessions by commission to city staff from 306. But as it stands right now, we would be moving forward.
Thank you.
But you haven't had that meeting yet with Ms. Radigan, right?
No.
My
There's been
understanding is,
2 pre-applications so far with planning and zoning.
so in other words, you still have to get together with that department and get whatever information you need to get some clarity so you know how to move forward, right? You still need more information is what it sounds like.
I think I do have all the information. I believe I think I have her directive, but there's this other side of it that I mentioned where it's minor site plan modification application.
All right, let's go board member Hay.
My question has been answered. However, we want to do everything we can to make you successful in this venture. Because I recall back when we first started this negotiation and talk with the previous administration, we wanted to make sure we were fair to minority business. We wanted to make sure that we did for you the same as we did with other entrepreneurs, restaurant owners. However, we do need to make sure that we do everything according to the books and decently in order. One question I do have for staff, I think you mentioned roughly ballpark, $100,000 between a major and a minor. Is that an accurate figure? Is that what it would cost maybe to go from a minor modification to a major? If I can ask Tweet, would you know that?
I wouldn't know unless I know the consultants and their rates and their charges. I do know that Ms. Radigan and Mr. Temple is online if you want to ask, but as far as the process is, again, it's his choice on who he'd like to hire, bigger firm, smaller firm, but the process is still requires documents to be submitted to staff for review. So that's something that I don't think this board can weigh in or really commission unless there are certain, once it's been reviewed by staff and it goes to planning, it goes to commission or goes to a historic preservation board. There's different boards, and that's why it's hard for staff to just say it's okay. Staff can make certain recommendations, but they still have to go through the steps of that process.
I guess that's where I am. We need to make sure that that is done right. And from where I sit, you need to fulfill those obligations so we can continue the process. I think I heard you say that it's not a showstopper. If you have to go that other route, it would be tremendous impact on you, but it would not be a showstopper. So if you would submit those items that you need to submit and reviewed by the various proper boards, then we can talk. I don't think you, maybe I'm wrong, you fulfill all of your obligations yet.
No, Reverend Hay, Commissioner Hay, what I've
Fine.
One's higher than the other.
My apologies if I spoke out of place. We haven't been able to determine which way was right or left, not to be averse to fulfilling said obligations that are required. So that's been do we go right? Do we go left? That's been the holdup of forward progress up to this point. As far as the pricing that you mentioned, the consultants that I had with me last time, they weren't very cheap, but they weren't part of big firms either. So their price to me, fully encompassing to complete the minor site plan modification, was somewhere in the range of about $130,000 because of the things that are required within a major site plan modification application.
Yep.
Sorry, it's a lot of shuns.
A lot of words.
So as opposed to if it were a minor site plan modification application, the cost might be about $60,000. But that's where the holdup has been. So it's like when you come to a place and you're like, hey man, well, we're gonna do this because we don't even have to do that. No, we don't have to do that. We only have to do this. We only have to do that. And I think on the minor site plan modification application, there may be somewhere between 3 to 5 steps. And those steps are contiguous to the major site plan modification application. But on a major, there's traffic and a larger list that comprises a lot more things that cost money that have already been done for the site. From my understanding, what generated the major site plan modification was the fact that the shipping containers could be seen from the street or would be seen from the street. So I don't, so because you can see the shipping containers from Ocean Avenue from the back of the property, now you need to do this because so on and so forth.
All right, thank you. Anything else, board member?
Not now.
Okay, Vice Chair.
So I think my colleagues asked all the right questions. I don't have any more questions to follow up on. I mean, what it sounds like, this is your first project that you've done in the city to this length, right? And I think this is the first, container style restaurant that we've seen in the city. So it hasn't been done before. There's a learning curve. I heard that you're still committed, whether, there is going to be an increase or cost or not. I think, that conversation is for another time. I think right now we're just looking to extend.
Correct.
And, see what we can do. It sounds like you've been doing the right thing. My position is, let's go move forward with an extension. I think we decided between 1 and 6 weeks and 3 months would be, or 4 months. 6 months.
I would recommend
what do you
the
recommend?
outside, maybe 6 months for a
6 months,
site
okay.
plan approval application, and then maybe I'll have to look at right now, but while you're maybe adding 6 months to all the other timelines as well.
So that's my position. I think this is an important project and I want to, take our time with it, make sure we do right by the community, do right by you and, make sure we dot our I's and cross our T's. And I know building's been extremely busy recently with all the projects that we've had, moved forward, and we got some new information recently. So I think we should move forward with an extension.
All right, thank you. Before we entertain a motion, I'll just entertain the public comment now. If you would like to speak on this item, now would be the time to approach the podium. Going once, going twice. I don't see anybody approaching the podium. Ms. Kerfman, do we have anybody online?
No hands are raised at this time.
All right, public comments are now closed. Vice Chair, was that a motion? And to be clear, the motion was to provide an extension of 6 months and also to amend the current purchase and development agreement to adjust all other timelines with the 6 months shift.
So move.
All right, there's a motion from Vice Chair. I heard a second from Board Member Kelly. All those in favor say
Mayor?
aye. Yes.
One question.
1 second.
I didn't want you to make the motion and then I'd not be able to speak. So I didn't.
Is it, just go ahead. Just go ahead. I would prefer not to interrupt the process, but just go ahead.
Okay. In regards to the other concern of major versus minor, is there any direction?
That might be a city item.
Thank you.
All right. Vice Chair?
We have.
Oh, your microphone.
Adam, if you're listening, do you think you can reach out to Mr. Barber on this, Amanda?
Council, you want to chime in? You're about to say something?
I was gonna say, let's just leave the city
Okay, we'll leave it
discussions
at that.
elsewhere.
Right.
Thank you.
I was very tempted to, Vice Chair, but all right. So we had a motion, we had a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. Motion passes.
Cool. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Barber.
Thank you.
Best of luck. We look forward to hearing from you again. We're now moving on to item 13D. This is the project update on the Bride of Christ Daycare Center on Northeast 10th Avenue. I'm going to ask the executive director to introduce the item before we turn to the applicant.
Sorry, I just want to make sure that it's 6 months from today and not January's.
6 months from today.
Okay, okay. I just want to make sure.
I wasn't
Yeah.
even thinking about January.
Well, January is when it was due, so the condition as it's written, it's based on another timeline, like from effective date. And so I just want to make sure it's 6 months from today.
6 months from now.
Okay, great.
All right, so would you introduce the item, Ms. Shutt?
Yes, of course. All right, sorry, Yes, the item is, again, a project update for the, on the Bride of Christ Daycare Center located Northeast 10th Avenue. And quick summary of this, the project back on November 12th, 2019, the board approved a purchase and sale agreement between the CRA and the Bride of Christ Tabernacle Church for the purchase of a CRA-owned property. The appraised value was $49,000. The sale took place. There's also a reversionary option for the CRA should it chooses to do this if the church is unable to fulfill the obligation in the agreement. There was a deadline in paragraph 19 that basically says that the church has commenced construction on the daycare facility. There was an extension to this date, and the latest date was that the obligation was to begin or commence construction of the daycare no later than January 16th, 2022. The board gave a 1-year extension last year with a caveat that 6 months the church was supposed to report on the progress. The 6 months came by. In July, the church did report that they understood and they knew that what they had to do. They did not meet the deadline for commencement of development because they submitted for a different process through the building department versus through the plan and zoning. It was made known throughout the 3 years that they needed a use approval. So the board in February of this year gave additional time for the church to go through the site plan review process through the city to report back to the board today to see what the progress is. Staff can report that they are progressing through the process. However, they are about 2 months approximately behind what the target date was. It was anticipated and indicated by the church in February that they would be before the Planning and Development Board this month. We had reached out to planning and zoning staff. In attachment 19, there is a timeline in which there is a realistic time frame in which all comments can be addressed by the church's consulting team. And it looks like it would be anywhere between June or July as the outside date when they can reach the Planning and Development Board. Once they go through Planning and Development Board, then they will be going to 2 hearings with the commission, and those dates are indicated on the attachment. The outside date would be basically August 15th for the first hearing, and then September 7th for the second hearing. So I'm looking at the latest possible. If they can do it before, that's great, but we're looking at September before they would get their zoning approval and they can commence with their building permit approval. So shortly, hopefully after that, several months after, they would be able to get a permit in hand. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Comfort, who represents the church.
Before you begin, I just want to have some clarity on your recommendation, Ms. Shutt. All the way to commencement of construction, what's the total reasonable time?
Probably, again, once again, depending on the consultants that they choose and the familiarity with the city's code, probably not until December. So like I said, September is when they'll get their zoning approval on the outside date. They can possibly get it earlier in August. But given several months to review building permits, I know they're in the system already, but again, there may be some revisions that's needed based on the new layout that gets approved. So what they submitted back in December may not be what is going to be permitted to be submitted after the zoning approvals. So.
All right, thank you, and good evening and welcome.
Before we begin, I want to make sure
Could you state your name for the record?
Oh, yeah, Joel Comerford. We have a Zoom attendee, the architect, who's been working with Louis Banscombe for the past couple of weeks. So he said to unmute him.
When we get to him, we can do that. Unless you're finished with your comments.
Well, no, I'm not. I don't want to start till he's on.
Got it. All right,
He
Ms.
knows
Kerf-
more about it than I do.
Okay. Ms. Kerfman, is that person online?
What is the name?
Hi.
Yes, yes, he is online.
Oh, he's on now?
Do you want me to unmute him now?
Just wanted to make sure he's on. He texted me, make sure he's on, that's all.
He sounds like he is on.
Okay, sounds good. So thank you for that. And thank you, members of the board and council, for being here. And I understand this is a 3-month meeting for you to ensure that the church has made progress. They graciously appreciate your stay on not enforcing your rights under the reverter agreement back in February. So it's my understanding, according to the agenda and what Kyle has told me in the emails I'm seeing between Kyle and your senior planner, Louis Binscombe, that the project submittal has been accepted over by Louis, and now it's going to be going to the final DART review next week. And then he says, he being the engineer, seems to think that it'll be on the July 18th planning and zoning meeting. I don't know if that jives with what you were saying about August or not, but that's my understanding right now, that there have been some bugs worked out of the application that was submitted the past 3 months. And so now the next step is for the final DART approval.
So we do have the dates on the screen. I believe that's, yes, July 18th.
The best case,
July
18th.
18th. Okay.
Worst case, August 15th.
Hi,
Okay.
hi, if I
Planning
could.
and
Sorry.
zoning meeting, right?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
All right, so I believe your partner was about to speak. Could you please state your name for the record, sir?
Hi, Kyle Mayu with Blue Horizon. I apologize I can't be there in person today. We have a newborn at the house, and I've been mostly working from home recently.
Congratulations.
Thank you. But yes, just to echo kind of what Joel is saying is, yes, we have submitted the DART package before the April 5th deadline. We've received comments at the end of last week, and we plan on having comments addressed for the DART meeting on May 16th, which does track us towards the July 18th City Commission hearing.
Okay. In light of that, I guess the position of the church right now is, you probably want to know if they're still in this. Yes, they are. The bank is still waiting in the wings for the financing. Contractor's waiting for permit approval. The church is still committed to building this daycare facility, and they would graciously ask the board tonight for a continuance of the stay on your rights under the reverter agreement, or in the alternative, I guess, seek out a second addendum to the contract, extending the time for commencing construction on the property until, I guess, maybe after December, when we think we can get boots on the ground.
Thank you. Let me turn to council. If council has a recommendation, do we just amend the agreement for construction, commencement of construction date, or stay, or which?
It's the board's choice. If you want to amend the contract, we can certainly take that direction. You can also just direct us to not execute. The form that would take is we would provide a notice to them that it's time for the reverter to come into effect, and then they would be required to give us a deed. So you can simply direct us to withhold from taking that action for the moment. Doing so does not waive your ability to do it in the future.
Now, is that the cleaner option? I'm just looking down the road with that. What would be
If you would
less
like-
headache down the road?
If you put the action into a contract amendment, then it will become, that will be the new rules of the game. If you simply direct us not to execute the required notices, you can change that at any time. If you give them a year extension, we make it a contract amendment, then that is a permanent decision in terms of what that date is.
All right, Executive Director.
I just want to bring up to your attention the reversionary option. Also, again, since you're doing the contract amendment anyway, the reversionary option also says that we will, if we choose that option in the future, and that we would pay consultant costs in addition to the costs of the land. So again, my understanding is you can also either change, amend, or keep that as it is, because again, these revisions cost money. And if you're giving an extension, you may want to take a look at it, either cap it or not, or, just leave it as it is. That's something that's the board prerogative. I just want the board to know that if there is a reversionary, that we are obligated to pay verifiable costs for the consultants. So since you're doing the contract amendment, you may want to take a look at that as well.
Possibly a contract amendment.
If
You're doing it anyway. You're doing it anyway. So, to provide incentives to make sure that, everything is going as planned. So it's not another year before we see the church get underway. We'd love to have them open. I think it's a necessary thing for the community. But if you want to amend the contract, you may want to take a look at that section as well.
Understood. Let's hear from my colleagues. Vice Chair, if you want to begin.
I'm not going to deny another extension or amendment when we just granted it to the applicant prior. I'm okay with that. Do you want to do what's fiscally responsible? Can you touch on that again?
Yeah, so right now, if you were to ask for that to be revert back, you would have to pay the consultant fees. If there's verifiable costs, engineering fees, architectural fee, whatever the consultant fees, design fees are.
And you're recommending that stricken from the contract?
Or if you want to agree to a cap or something, because again, if you want to further and move the project and making sure that everything, the milestones are met and everything like that, that's great, but that's just additional money that you would have to pay. If they're doing it anyway, and you feel that that is, that's our goal and there's no need to do that, then you would leave that section alone. I leave that to you, because again, it's not just the 49,000 that you have to pay back the church. If you exercise that option, it's that plus consult.
If I could just sort of couch it in legal terms, if the board chooses to do a contract amendment, we could request and the applicant could agree that we, in exchange for extending the deadline to a different date, we cap the amount of consultant fees that we pay, because under the contract, she's correct. We pay for the land, we pay the purchase price back, and also improvement to the land, which includes verifiable costs for consultants. So that process taking longer means more money is being spent. So in exchange for extending the date, we could ask for a cap on that. And if they agree to it, then we could amend the contract with that direction.
Is this something you guys would be up for?
I'd have to talk to my client about that. We'd have to take that under consideration. We can get back to you on that.
So the board's options, remain. You could simply direct us not to proceed with taking the actions to revert the property in the next month. Or we could continue to say you could table this item until next month. You could direct us to move forward with a reverter if that's the board's desire.
I'd be okay to table this item and give you some more time.
And to continue to stay in the meantime.
Correct. Continue to stay.
Yes. All right, let's go around the days. I'm sorry, were you finished? Okay. All right, Board Member Hay, your thoughts?
No, I was trying to hear that last part that you were saying, Board Member Turkin. That you're basically saying that we would have them come back next meeting with whether or not they're going to
whether or not their client is comfortable with doing an exchange for additional time and exchanging for putting a cap of the payment of consultant fees under the reverter clause.
Okay, I can go along with that.
I mean,
bottom line, you're looking at about 40 kids in the daycare part of it, and that's really a big concern of mine. About you're moving, but you're moving slowly. Okay, and that's as long as you're moving, I can live with that. If you bring back, like, talk with your people and let us know what your position is on next meeting. I can live with that.
Okay. Can you submit that proposal to me in an email or something? So I would.
Yes, Executive Director, if you could submit what he said, if you could submit this request for the exchange time in exchange for a cap, for example, on the consultant fees. He just needs it in writing so he can take it back.
Something so I can make it.
Sure, we can summarize, you know.
Would you like to make a recommendation as to amount?
Sure. I mean, typically we would do, as council said, we would take any improvement that's put on the property that stays with the land. This is a little different because it is a daycare and we really don't, you know, most of the time, and it's consultant costs, right? So it's design costs for daycare. I would say probably up to 50,000, you know, but I hesitate to do that because you really can't use the daycare plans. You know, in the future, if we were to do this back, if we were reverting it back, we would revert it back to assembling land to activate the commercial corridor that is MLK, right? So that's why I'm at a hesitancy. I would certainly say definitely if it's infrastructure that's put into play, the pipes or whatever it is that is done, the improvements in the lot. But as far as design costs and plans, you know, without being just throwing out a number, but typically, you know, if you need a number, probably a $50,000 cap, not to exceed that to pay back the fees. But again, we'd have plans that we can't really use.
And if I can just quickly chime in, because the executive director does need more time to think about a specific number, I would be comfortable leaving it at her discretion.
Yes.
That's just my opinion.
Right.
I'm okay.
No problem.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
Were you finished, board member?
Yes.
Let's go to board member Kelly.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm not opposed to an extension on this, and I think that I think it's reasonable that we look at and that your client looks at you know, a cap on those fees because we have been going through this process for a very long time and there's been lots of delays, and I feel like we need to make sure that it keeps moving. And so hopefully that will keep things moving along. It seems like we are moving in the right direction. This is something that's very needed, and it was needed a long time ago. So hopefully we'll see this happening, you know, continue on this process, but I'm fine with my colleagues as far as, you know, tabling it, giving staff and council time to figure out the best way to proceed. And, you know, in the meantime, you know, I'm good with an extension.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Just to be clear, the direction that we're going to take, and I'll take this as a motion, of course, is, well, in a moment, is to take, to table this item and to continue the stay, right? That is the general consensus that we have. Let's go to public comment first before we actually take that motion. Anybody in the audience, now would be the time to approach the podium to speak specifically on this item. Seeing none, we're going to go online.
No hands are raised at this time.
All right, thank you, Ms. Kerfman. Public comments are now closed. All right, may I have that motion? And council, I just want to make sure, did we cover our bases? All right, with that motion. May I have that motion to table this item as well as to continue the stay? This is, again, is item 13D.
So move.
Table to the next meeting. All right. We heard a motion from board member Hay, a second from Vice Chair Turkin. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those who oppose say no. The ayes have it. Motion passes unanimously.
Can I ask when the next meeting is?
13th, June 13th.
June 13th.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. We previously amended the agenda to bring up 15D to this time. This is the MLK corridor update. I believe Mr. Tack, you'll be presenting that update.
Yes. Hold on one second. Let me just pull this up real quick. We have Vicky. I don't know. Can we show him the video first? We have some video of the
Do
inside
you
of
want
the
the
building.
video or the pictures first?
The video.
Video.
I'll bore you with the pictures later. So we did a has been using in the job. We'll go through the photos now, if you guys want. For the benefit of the public, MLK Junior Boulevard is a mixed-use project. It's providing 120 affordable multi-family rental units, as well as providing 8,250 square feet of leasable commercial space. As far as the east building, you're seeing the front of the east building from looking south from MLK Junior Boulevard. They have been working on finishing the parapet walls, as you can see up above, and the drywall, as you can tell from the video, is being installed. And they are working on installing the molding tile cabinets, as well as continuing to work on the windows, doors, the electrical, plumbing, and the mechanical. They're also working on the elevator, which I couldn't get a good photo of because it was in the dark, so you couldn't really see much of what was going on there. But from the interior, you can see that they're actually starting to come together. You can really see it, the molding, the drywall, the tile, the cabinetry. In the north building, there you're seeing the front of the north building from MLK. If you go to the next picture, you can see that they are applying stucco to the exterior of the walls. They're continuing to work on finishing the parapet walls. If you go to the next photo, right there, you can see they're working on the backside of the walls. They're continuing to work with drywall that is being installed on the interior. They're working on the windows, doors, electrical, plumbing, as well as the fire. So you can see it's not far as long as the east building, but they're moving. The next picture. And on the west building, they're starting to do the plywood sheathing on the parapet wall. You can, or in the roof, actually. The windows, doors, and electrical and plumbing are being installed in the building. There you can see it, the west building from the east, as well as the roof there. And you see they're getting ready to start doing the weatherproofing. And the next one, or is that it? It's just a little bit more of the skeletal on the inside of the building. CRA staff is continuing to coordinate with CMC on leasing the commercial spaces. And the construction timeline estimates the project as being the summer of 2023. And we'll continue to keep updating you monthly until the completion of construction. If you have any questions, you can take them if you want. Anything?
All right, any questions, comments from my colleagues? All right, thank you for that, Mr. Tack. That concludes that update. We're now going to move on to item 13E, approval of the second amendment to the development agreement between the CRA and the Centennial Management Corp. Wells Landing Apartments LLC for the commercial component of the MLK Junior Boulevard Corridor Mixed-Use Project.
Yes, Board Chair and Board members. This is a request to amend the development agreement between the CRA and Centennial Management for two particular items. This is in regard to the NOP office, the 10,055 square foot office space for the Neighborhood Officer Policing Program. In the agreement, when it was adopted, Centennial was obligated to do the improvements for the NOP office within 18 months of the effective date, which would have been early August. However, there's been some delays with doing that because, again, there were some question with the PBSO merger. There were getting the officers on board, as well as the option for the city to actually do the design in-house to save some money. Since then, the city has asked us to, because of workload, they're not able to do that with their consultants or their in-house staff. So city CRA staff have had to go out to get some quotes for the architectural work, which necessitate giving Centennial a little more time to do the improvements because we need drawing and permit plans first to be done. So we've coordinated and we have collaborated with Mr. Sweezy as to an acceptable time for the extension. And he recommended that we do it within 12 months of the final inspection for the residential unit for the commercial, the mixed use building to the north. We're in agreement with that, excuse me. The second component of this is the board has previously allocated $25,000 towards design and $75,054 for the construction of the NOP office improvements. Since then, Sierra has shopped around for the consultant costs, and we could get that done for $15,000. We're just asking the board to make the amendment to the agreement to allow us to use the remaining 10 or so thousand towards construction. So those are the two that will be two major parts that will be needed. Attachment 5 has a draft second amendment that our attorney has been working with Centennial's attorney, Mr. Alligood. We have forwarded the draft to Centennial to review, and we're hoping to get their concurrence on the changes very soon.
And Ms. Shutt, just to be clear, all of these items that you mentioned are in the second amendment?
Yes.
Okay, so
Yes.
we're covered. All right, Council, were you about to add anything? All right. Anything else? All right, let's go to my colleagues. Board Member Kelly.
No, my only question, Catherine, is for you. So if the agreement is not finalized or approved by everyone, what are we doing?
So we were hoping that it would be, and we do not anticipate issues based on conversations. However, because of the financing of the project, they are required to send it around to their various lenders. In the past, this has not raised issues, so it is a bit of an exercise in optimism to bring it to you tonight. But for just to keep it moving, we thought that that would be the best course of action. If you would prefer to wait until next meeting when hopefully they'll have sign off, we can certainly do that.
Well, I guess my only position or my only thought would be if there were obviously any changes to an agreement that we approved tonight, it would need to come back to us. That would be my recommendation, is that I would want to see and hear and understand any changes.
It would need to come back to you if there were any changes. In general, I will say that the changes that are made in here are for the convenience of the developer, more so than the CRA. It extends technically a deadline that is on them and allows flexibility in spending. That does not mean that they will approve it, obviously, but I will say that the changes are in that nature, and so that may be helpful.
Great, thank you.
Board Member Kelly, are you recommending tabling?
No, I am comfortable with approving this with the understanding that if there are any changes or anything, that it comes back to us for, to view again.
Understood. Thank you. Board Member Hay.
I am also comfortable with it. The more time is needed for the bill out, right? Okay. I'm good. I'm good.
For them to build it out.
For
So
them
yes,
to
it is.
build out.
That's why it's to
Right.
their favor as well.
Okay. I'm good.
All right, Vice Chair.
With this agreement or this lease, is there anything that determines how many of these officers need to stay in this building?
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, stay in the suite.
So this agreement before you is not the agreement that would deal with that, because this is the agreement between the CRA and the developer. Your next item is an interlocal agreement between the city and the CRA that discusses those concepts. You also have an additional interlocal with the city related to that. So that is discussed, but it's not in this agreement because it's not between the city and the CRA.
And when you say next agreement, I don't see that on this.
In the,
On your agenda,
Okay.
your next item.
Oh, okay,
14A.
there we go. Thank you.
and the way it usually works is, again, there's another agreement that sets forth the innovative policing as it's, required by statutes. And it sets, in that agreement, there's an exhibit that the city manager and myself can make amendments to, which sets forth that the chief will be the one to supervise and will be the one that will have a say in the operational and maintenance, the operational procedures with the NOP officers. But there are certain minimums that the officers will need to meet in terms of reporting to make sure that it's still innovative and keeping in line with our statutory requirements to fund this particular program.
Okay, no, that's fine. So I guess that I'll save my conversation from when we get to that agreement.
So this is between us
sure.
and the developer.
Yep.
The next one will be an agreement between us and the city.
Okay, perfect.
This space.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Vice Chair. Is there anything else to add from anybody here? Otherwise, we'll go to public comment. Okay, let's go to public comment. If you'd like to speak specifically on item 13E, now is the time to approach the podium. Seeing no one approaching the podium, is there anybody online, Ms. Kerfman?
No hands are raised at this
All
time.
right, no
Thank you.
hands raised. Public comments on this item are now closed. May I have a motion to approve item 13E?
Second.
We have a motion from Board Member Hay, a second from Vice Chair Turkin. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. Motion passes unanimously. And City Clerk, if you could take note. All right, thank you. All right, we're now moving on to 14A, discussion and consideration of an interlocal agreement with the City of Boynton Beach for the use of Unit 8 at the Heart of Boynton Shops for the Neighborhood Officer Policing NOP program.
Yes, Board Chair and Board. Again, this is for the same space that we talked about in 13E. As part of the development agreement with Centennial, we also negotiated rent-free space for the Neighborhood Officer Policing Program at Unit 8. Also, the agreement with Centennial, we would be reimbursing them for doing the improvements to this space. So now this interlocal agreement is needed because we want to be able to allow the city to use this NOP space for future and for as long as the building will last, which will probably be after the CRA sunsets. So as part of this interlocal agreement, it sets forth that the city can use this rent-free for the intended purpose of the NOP office, and also that the CRA will be reimbursing for the cost of the improvement. So we have also been working with the city police department as well as the city attorney's office. I know Catherine has been working with Sean Schwartz from the city attorney's office. So these terms have been looked at by both sides. And once this is approved by the CRA board, it will go forward to commission for approval. And with that, there's also an attached lease that we have provided, I believe, in one of the attachments. So the lease will, set aside the costs of the CAM, the cost of utilities, because this is just rent free. So as part of the operation of it, annually, the police department will submit, or the city manager's office will submit to the CRA for us to review as part of the NOP funding agreement. So that's a separate agreement to fund the officers and what's needed to operate this space. So that's what Board Member Turkin, that you may be looking at as well for the operational parts of that, and who is going to be in there, or how many hours they need to report on community policing activities, because it's got to be above and beyond what normal policing will be.
All right, thank you, Ms. Shutt. Board Member Turkin, do you want to begin?
Sure. How many NOB officers do we have?
Currently, there are 3 approved under this year's budget, with 1 community, it's a CSE officer, the non-commissioned officer. I believe the department has put in a draft request for the budget, and you'll be seeing this starting in July, actually August, you'll see it as well. As part of our CRA budget planning process, we'll be looking at that, vetting that out, and proposing or introducing that for your review as part of your budget.
With this ILA, is there a requirement for some of these NOP officers to stay in this NOP office? Or the amount of officers to stay in there?
No, there is no requirement for the set amount of people being staying there. However, there is some requirements that they should be available if there's an appointments that needs to be, you know, if a member of the public needs to make an appointment or wants to see that a officer needs to be present at that time, but it's got to be, I think the chief wants this to be more of boots on the ground, making sure that, you know, the officers are available to the community as well. So that is to remain flexible for the chief and how he operates this program, because the supervisory role is belongs to the chief. Captain Brodowski is here if there's any questions. But also, one of the things that we are looking to amend the actual neighborhood officer police interlocal, that's the one that city manager and I can sign. We're expanding this to go to all the CRA district. Originally, back in 2016, this program was limited to HOB only. And as our downtown expands, there's needs also to help educate the new business owners. And we've been doing a lot of the business walks ourselves with staff. But recently, the last year or so, staff has been walking with one of the NOP officers as well to introduce ourselves, welcome new business in, and if there's any questions so that we can balance out the needs of the community as well. We're still going to be present with the office here in the heart of Boynton, but I think, you know, again, as our downtown, our CRA grows, we need to probably amend the original agreement in 2016 to just not limit it just to the heart of Boynton, but to other areas in the CRA district.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, Executive Director. Yes, so I'm asking these questions because for that reason, I don't want that there's a requirement to have these NOP officers in that building. You know, I want to make sure that all of the CRA district, you know, has that community policing component, especially as we grow. I mean, we've had 3 projects approved in the last year. And so I think it's important that we have those resources throughout. Captain, can you kind of tell me what the day-to-day is going to look like once this is developed here?
Yes, Captain Brodowski, I'm over the CRA program at this point. Like the director said, we're in the process of modifying that agreement to expand the basically the jurisdictional area that the CRA officers can operate in. Previously, it was somewhat limited to the heart of Boynton area, but with the expansion of the downtown and the expansion of the CRA, the hope is to service the entire CRA district as opposed to a portion thereof. And to answer your question regarding the officers at the NOP office, quite frankly, a police station is not a place for officers to spend their time in any law enforcement agency. You know, the majority of the time you see people in a police department is at the command staff level because they have the administrative requirements to deal with basically office work. Our police officers are supposed to be on the street interacting with the public, and we have a collective agreement. I think that the officers in the CRA have the responsibility to make those contacts with the community and spend the time in the community. In the short time that I've had the program and it's been reinstituted, I have overemphasized the need for the business walks outside of the CRA directed business walks. These are other business walks done by the officers themselves to focus and spend time and make those contact not only with the business community, but not only with the business community, with the community as a whole, to attend the event that they have Thursday night at Sarah Sims Park, to attend the Heart of Boynton meetings, to attend those meetings where they can meet the people, identify their concerns, and do their best to address concerns. We had a meeting with the Coalition of Clergy. They expressed concerns regarding the Northeast 11th, 12th, and 13th Avenue on the east side as it related to traffic issues and problems. You know, the CRA officers immediately reached out to staff in the city, and those concerns were being addressed, but we were able to expedite changes, at least temporary changes to the roadway because of those interactions and those desires from the community. So that's important to us. It's extremely important to us, but to saddle a police officer to a physical location is diminishing their capabilities. We want that office to be available for a response, to deal with community concerns, to have meetings. It will have a small conference room, probably not much bigger than the center of this, if not smaller, to entertain a small meeting with community people. And we want to use that for that reason. But we don't want to spend time in one location, because you can't develop relationships. If you expect people to come to you, you have to go to the people. So I think we have that kind of collective vision for the CRA to grow, and we have to change the agreement to expand our aperture, or to expand our territory. And we're working on that.
Thank you, Captain. And thank you for answering those questions, because that is exactly what I don't want, is for just having a bunch of NOP officers hanging out and not being present in the community. So thank you for that.
No, and I'm available
clarification.
to answer any questions that anybody on the dais would have.
Yeah.
That's why I'm here tonight. Not the only reason I'm here. I'm here because we want to be here for the CRA meetings, because we're part of the CRA, but I'm also here to address those questions as well.
Perfect. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Vice Chair. We're going to move on to Board Member Hay. Any feedback on this item?
I'm just curious on how you're going to split that up in terms of CRA can only spend monies in CRA district, and yet we're going to have that. We're going to, I guess the ILS will, you know where I'm going now. Okay.
I think I do. So you're correct. CRAs are not empowered to provide funding for ordinary police operations. There is a specific provision in the statute that allows and encourages establishment of a neighborhood storefront police station by CRAs as part of an innovative policing program. So this lease, or this interlocal to allow the lease to happen between Wells Landing and the city, would be to effectuate that, would be to provide a neighborhood storefront police station. And the CRA, through its other interlocal, the one that dictates sort of how the program works, the one that separate one speaks to the measures and the requirements that the CRA has to ensure that the CRA funding provides for policing that is above, beyond, and innovative ordinary policing measures. So through a series of agreements, we have that laid out, and we also have funding protocols in place to ensure that the funds are used appropriately.
Are we talking about 4 or 5? How many?
So right now you have 3 officers. I think there's a proposal, and again, we'll probably present it to the board as part of the budget for 4 officers instead of 3 and then 1 CSC non-commissioned officer.
So these officers will have the rights and privileges to operate as regular officers in the CRA district or outside the CRA district. I know sometime we had another, what can I say? It wasn't a clerk, but there was another title for the person that was.
I think it's CSC officers,
CSC,
community.
Yeah. Will there still be that type of?
It's a police service aide. At this point, that's what we're budgeted for. We don't have the staffing for that. We've sent a proposal to the CRA to take the PSA from away and make that another officer. We feel that we will better serve the community and the CRA's district. And to answer your question, Commissioner Hay, our intent is not to operate outside the CRA district, and the intent is to keep those 4 officers in the CRA district at all times. That is the intent. Now, if there is some heinous crime and we need every officer in the city, I think you would want us to, if there was an active shooter, you would want those officers to respond. But for general operations and for day-to-day operations and for community engagement and dealing with the problems in the CRA's district, dealing with homelessness, dealing with trying to provide service for homeless people, you know, trying to deal with those type of situations. That's what those officers are there for, to make those developmental relationships with the community, to address their concerns. And that's the vision we have, to keep those, if we are fortunate enough to get a 4th officer, to keep those 4 officers within the district at all times. And I've sat down with them. I've gone over in detail the district, what the district area covers, defined the map to them, demonstrated to them the areas of patrol. We've met outside in different areas within the district and in shopping centers to discuss, you know, contact with the patrons, not only the patrons, but the business owners in the centers to make themselves available. And we have some innovative things that we're trying to do. But again, we have to get the ILA done. And hopefully when that ILA is done, we can implement those changes so we can service the entire CRA district.
Thank you, Captain.
Yes, sir.
That's all I have, Chair.
Thank you. Board Member Kelly?
Tweed, it's a 5-year lease with 5-year extensions. Is that correct?
I think we, you know, again, this is the deal we have with Centennial is for really in perpetuity, but to have time set, monitorable dates on there, I think we did the 5-year with 5 automatic extensions.
And the the purpose of this interlocal is to allow the lease to occur between the city and Wells
Centennial.
Landing, right? So this is, right now, we have the rights to have a rent-free lease. We would like to assign that right to the city because that is probably more convenient for everyone and makes more sense considering that the CRA will eventually sunset.
Right. Well, that's what you know, it sunsets. And so that brings us to like 30 years. And so that was my only question, really.
And we do it in anticipation, the lifespan of the building, hopefully it'll last beyond 30 years, but there's got to probably be some maintenance and major repair. And and again, we'll probably expire up to 30 years. So the city is free to negotiate or, you know, work directly with Centennial at that time.
No, that's fine. I just wanted clarity on that. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Let's go to public comment on this item. All right, now is the time to approach the podium if you would like to speak in item 14A. All right, seeing no one in the chambers, let's go online. Ms. Kerfman?
No hands are raised.
All right, seeing no hands, public comment on this item is now closed. Staff was kind enough to write the motion. If you could move the screen just further down, I'm going to read the motion exactly as written. So we're going to be 100% airtight. All right, the motion is to approve the interlocal agreement with the city of Boynton Beach for the use of Unit 8 at the heart of Boynton Shops for the neighborhood officer policing program, the reimbursement to Centennial Management Corporation for the build out of the NOP office, and authorize the board chair to execute the agreement subject to final legal review. May I have that motion?
So moved.
The motion was Board Member Kelly. The second was Board Member Hay. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. We're now moving on to item 14B. 14B reads consideration of a waiver of the right of first refusal for the property located at 220 Northeast 11th Avenue, Boynton Beach, Florida. So Ms. Shutt, if you could introduce the item, then we'll hear from other relevant parties.
Sure. This is a agenda item for a property located at 220 Northeast 11th Avenue. Back in 2007, the CRA provided assistance to Ms. McCormick under the First Time Home Buyer Assistance Program, known as HAP, to provide homeownership opportunities to families who would have otherwise not be able to afford it based on the cost of the property or the house. The city also provided Ms. McCormick also with $16,000 in home buyers assistance. Since then, actually, no, go back. The agreement or the program was intended to provide the homeowners with this assistance in return for staying in the house for 30 years. And there are some parameters when, the homeowners could sell it to and who to sell it to and what the payback would be into the program. So if Ms. McCormick leaves prior to the 30 years and sells the property to an eligible buyer, then of a certain income range, then there is no penalty. We just need to make sure that the buyer has, qualifies for that income. If Ms. McCormick decides to sell it to a non-eligible homeowner, then there are some paybacks and again, interest that goes along with it, and 50% of the equity of the home. So this request before you, Ms. McCormick has a buyer that is not an eligible buyer. In order to sell, she's got a valid offer with a contract as seen in the attachment for $365,000. And it's to a church, so it's not an eligible homeowner. With that, she needs to seek the board's approval for a waiver of first right of refusal, because the agreement also says that the board has first right of refusal if she decides to sell within the 30 years. So she's seeking to have this waiver by the board so that she can proceed to sell it to this entity. It should also be noted that she'll have to go and do her due diligence with the city as well for their $16,000 in SHIP funding.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Let's begin with Board Member Kelly. Do you have any questions for staff?
I do not have any questions for staff at this time.
All right. Board Member Hay?
For clarity, she's trying to sell it for $365,000. And what was the original? When we gave it what, 50,000 was it?
Yes, I have to take a look. The actual original mortgage. That's what.
If you could approach the podium, actually, this would be a good time for you to introduce yourself, and if we have questions, you can chime in.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Tawanda Hanks. This is my friend, and I'm also the realtor on this deal. We've been at this.
And could you just say for the record who you represent?
I represent 220. I'm the listing agent for that property.
Okay.
And this is also my friend.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, okay. So what I was stating is I actually have those terms and everything actually pulled up on my computer. Before you guys, this, of course, it was signed back in 2007, but the terms are very, like these terms, the terms, that's what we don't understand. Like the way these terms were written, like when she bought this home, like when we first even went under, like I actually reached out to a couple of you guys trying to understand myself. But when I first spoke to her, I asked her, did she even understand this? Because what to my understanding from what the attorney said, the CRA wants their 50,000 back. The city wants their 16.5 back. Then on top of that, they want 50% of the equity because she's only been in there 15 years. And on top of that, because we couldn't, how do we qualify somebody for the HAP program? I found a buyer. I reached out to CRA and city back in October to let them know that she was considering selling it. So now because I didn't find a HAP buyer, she owes on top of the 50,000, 16.5, 50% of her equity, 4% interest on top of that. Like that was never set up. Like home buyer, I'm a realtor, been a realtor since 2017. Statistics doesn't even show that a home buyer stays in a home for 30 whole years. When I look at the way these terms were set up, year 1 through 5 is 80%. You got 6 through 20, and then you got 21 through 30. She's been in here 15 years. Like she's put crown molding. She's invested so much of her own personal money. Why does she have to give 50% of her equity on top of that? And you guys did away with this program, to my understanding, because there was so much confusion. She didn't even understand the terms when she signed.
So let me take a step back. So this item is about the waiving of the first right of refusal. So you could sell the property. And then you're also bringing to light why those terms are those terms. I can't speak to that. I wasn't there at that time, but apparently that's what she signed on to. I don't know if any of us were there at that time, but that's historically, that's what happened.
Right, but whoever gave her the money like, hey, here's some extra money to help you get your rate lower. Like it wasn't explained thoroughly to her, because I know nobody in their right mind would ever sign to those types of terms. I've never even seen a program in my 6-7 years of being a realtor with those types of terms. Hometown Heroes give you $35,000. You have to pay, and it's forgiven after 30 years. You sell the house, you just give back the $35,000. I've never seen a program with these type of strenuous terms. And again, it's hard because you guys don't even have this program anymore. So like, you know what I'm saying? Like you did away with the program, to my knowledge, because there was a lot of discrepancy as well.
All right, thank you. I want to address the item before us first. I mean, that's what we have, right? Which is the waiving of the first right of refusal so she can sell the property. Am I correct, counsel? That's what we have before us.
That is correct. That is the agenda item.
All right, so let's address that first. And let's go around the dais, getting everyone's opinions now that you've heard her speak, or if you have any additional questions to staff or to the person. Because that's what we're voting on tonight, that waiving of the first right of refusal. Any feedback from anyone?
If she sells it for $365,000, and does she give back the $50,000?
If she sells it to an eligible buyer.
But she said this one is not.
Right, then she would, so the program is to help families get into the properties. If they stay for 30 years, it's theirs to do whatever they want to with it. No repayment, no nothing, it's forgiven. But if they leave, we don't ask they stay there forever, but if they leave between year 1 and year 30, they have to ask the first right of refusal, and depending who they sell it to, not the amount, depending who they sell it to. If they sell it to a non-eligible buyer, then they have to pay it back with interest and also 50% of the equity. And I believe, from what I understand, the city has a similar requirements with SHIP. So that's why I have to say, please go to the city and ask them for the non-eligible family or non-eligible home buyer. So you'd have to go to the city as well.
I reached out to you both since October, so this is nothing new to nobody. I've been reaching out since October. How do I know if they qualify for a program or not? Like I'm a realtor. I don't qualify.
So yes, so we've
I've asked you guys. I said I have this person and that person. So I came to you and the city with these buyers, and you guys have done nothing to help me. So again, she's being penalized for something we have no knowledge of or no control over.
So actually, I could help you with that because there are a number of places, your banks and places, and that will do the income qualifications. Again, like I said, it's a process they go through to make sure that the eligible income buyers has the proper income to qualify. So we spoke about that. So we said that if the city has somebody that they accept for their SHIP program, we would accept the same process of income qualification. We've done this previously 2 months ago, where the bank that another HAP recipient did, they went to the bank and they had somebody
that was able to do the income qualifications. So there's a number of places and nonprofits that can do this income qualifications.
But you guys led me in no direction. I've reached out several times to you and Chris.
And I told you that if you had, you know, the income qualification, we can certainly tell you who could do that. So we've talked about that. But again, the city also has to do it. So we said we could take whoever the city has, and I could point you to some of the nonprofits that do this. So.
You guys have never given me that information.
All
like,
right.
to it.
Well,
So,
it's
one
okay.
second. Everybody, 1 second. All right. So it's clear to me that more conversation needs to be had so she can get the answers she needs.
Right.
And I see that you are offering the help. So thank you for that. So I'm going to say, please connect outside of this meeting, get all the information she needs so she can make a decision on those other items.
But that's not true because I've been reaching out since October. So right now, this is not true. We reached out back in October. I have all my emails and everything, and I can show them to you, forward them to each one of you guys if you like. I have everything in writing.
So I think one of the things, just to clarify, the reason we couldn't act because we need to have a contract. We need to have a contract. And the contract was just presented to us recently. And so we needed to do that to be able, first of all, whether it's income qualifier or not, we still need to have your waiver of first right of refusal. Again, so I, you know, again, I'll be glad to help if you choose to go with an income qualified buyer. From what I understand, that buyer that you may have offers a lesser cost for the sale price. Is that correct? Or were you looking
that buyer
for?
probably don't walk. I had 2 contracts, one at 365 cash, one at 335. They told me to take the 335. Anybody in a homeowner, that's a homeowner in this room, would not take a $30,000 offer less on their home. So they told me to take 335 over 365, but then she'll definitely be walking away with less because again, everybody want their money back and they want 50% of the equity, city asking for 50% of the equity. So again, what would she walk away with? And she's been here 15 years. She's put crown mold and marble floors. She's put impact windows. She just redid the roof, new water heater. Like she's done everything. The only reason she's moving is like the officer said, the crime rate has increased. I'm from Boynton Beach, born at Bethesda, May 22nd, 83. The crime rate has really increased. I moved my kids to Atlanta to get them away. So that's the only reason she's moving because the crime rate has increased. Shootings every day.
All right. Thank you. I want to hear from our board members. Board member Kelly, did you want to add something?
Yeah, Tweet, so question. So I'm to answer the question about first right of refusal, I'm fine with waiving our right for refusal so that we can move this forward. My understand, and I spoke to staff about this item, and I understand there was 2 proposals or 2 potential contracts. My understanding, Twee, is that one contract, potentially the one that was lower, was income, would potentially qualify under the income qualification. And so if that one did qualify, then she wouldn't have to pay back. So although it would be a lower selling price or lower purchase price, she wouldn't have to pay back the penalties because it was another income.
Interest only. The 4% interest only, which is only $2,000.
Ma'am, I'm going to ask you to not interrupt the speaker. I will give you the opportunity to respond, but please, we don't interrupt each other.
Right, so maybe,
Board member, please
thank
finish.
you, sorry. So, I mean, so my, in speaking to staff on this, because this is, you know, I'm not comfortable, you know, having someone pay that, but my understanding was there was 2 contracts that were presented to her. One was lower than the other. And you're right, most people would say, why would we take the contract that was lower? But my understanding is that contract would potentially give her, not have to have her pay back the $50,000 and the $16,000 and 50% of the equity. So maybe that wasn't explained, or maybe it wasn't understood, because I understand tensions are a little high right now. But my understanding is that there was one contract that had potential for that buyer would potentially qualify for the for her to not have to pay those back as opposed to the higher purchase price.
Let's get an answer to that right now.
Yes.
Executive Director, is that the case between the 2? Was that the pros and cons?
So there was a letter from our attorney detailing this out, and I'm gonna tell you which attachment that is, if we can bring that up. This was attachment 4, Vicki, if you can. And it details out the right of first refusal, the repayment and equity, and how to calculate that, and the income qualification.
And scroll down.
Yeah, if you could, thank you.
So it says if, item 3, if Ms. McCormick sells to a non-income qualified buyer, she will also need to pay back 50% plus the 4% annum. So again, and that's what we have right now, because currently we have a contract with a non-eligible buyer. If we
Wait,
had a
I'm not
contract,
sure the question was answered. I'm a little confused. Did you get was the question answered? Between the two numbers, if they went with the lower value, right? Does that mean that they don't have to do all of those things? They don't have to pay back that amount?
Just the 4%.
I just want to make sure, is that actually the case?
in here it says they would have to pay back only the 50,000
If they went with the lower value?
within the 30 years. So if they go with non-income qualification buyer, then they would have to pay back the 4%.
No, it says to a non-income qualified bidder, she'll also need to pay to the CRA the $50,000 loan balance and the interest at 4%.
Right.
So you said that for the, if they were qualified. So what is the answer for if they are qualified? I believe it's just the 4%. I don't believe it's that $50,000 loan. Can we scroll up so we can clarify that?
Yeah, let me go back to the original HAP agreement because it refers to paragraph 5. So Vicki, can you pull that up?
So in the meantime, I'll just say that Board Member Kelly, I'm leaning towards your direction. I think you may be right. The reason for choosing the lower option was because she'd actually be able to take more money home. That's my understanding. But I want to get verification of that, right?
Well, and I guess, that's I want to say that's almost a hypothetical because I'm not sure that we knew exactly that other one was, but in talking to staff, that was kind of the understanding was that this one was chosen because it was a higher price, but maybe I don't know that it was explained why, in this situation, what the terms would be that you would have to pay back so that it could be properly vetted.
All right, let's turn to the speaker.
So to my understanding, I've spoken to Teresa, I've spoken to Tui, and I've spoken to Ken Dodge just to make sure that I had clarity because this is a very unique situation and the first time I've ever had this type of deal. They said no matter which offer we took, it was going to be those terms. The 4% is only because the buyer that we chose isn't HAP qualified. So whether they were HAP qualified or not, to my knowledge, and this what Ken sent and emailed me, the same thing, that the 50% equity was going to be whether we went with the lower offer or the higher offer. The only thing would have changed was the 4% interest, which is only $2,000.
All right, counsel, were you about to say something?
Right. So the way that the HAP agreement itself reads, Tweet looks like she wants to say.
That's why I
So
wanted to go back to.
what the HAP agreement says that if they sell the property, and it specifies the range years, then that percentage of equity is due to the CRA. The equity determination is not based on the qualification of the purchaser. However, the $50,000 from the CRA and the 4% interest, that depends on the income qualification of the purchaser. So the equity would be due either way, but the repayment is what's contingent on who purchases it.
So if they are income qualified, they would still have to pay the percentage, I think 15 years. And where are we at with that 15 years?
It's again,
year 6 through 20 is 50% of the equity.
All right, 50% of the equity if they are income qualified. So it'd be 50% of the equity and not the $50,000.
If it were income qualified, that is correct.
Okay.
Wait, hold on. Say that again.
So under the agreement, the equity, the 50% of the equity is due no matter who it's sold to. However, if it is sold to an income qualified buyer, the $50,000 does not need to be paid and there does not need to be interest on it.
That wasn't what was told to us. That was not told to us. They said we had to pay the 50K, 16.5, 50% of the equity.
And who did you say told you that?
I spoke to Tui, I spoke to Ken Dodge. You spoke to Miss Teresa.
Okay. Vice Chair, you want to chime in?
Sir, so I think the first step here is the right of refusal. I don't think this is going to mitigate anything, so I'd like to make a motion to approve the right of refusal and then then we can,
Yes.
continue this conversation.
And I second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Again, this is to approve the waiver of the right of first refusal for this property, 220 Northeast 11th Avenue. Before I call for the vote, can we have public comment on this item? Again, this is the waiver of the right of first refusal. Seeing no one approach the podium, Ms. Karpman, is there anybody online?
No hands are raised at this time.
All right, public comments on this item are now closed. We have a motion that was from Vice Chair. We have a second from Board Member Hay. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those who oppose say no. The ayes have it. Motion passes unanimously. What this means is now that we have waived our right of first refusal, you have the ability to sell the property. All right. So now that it's opened the door, the next question are all of these other things that have been brought up. Frankly, there seems to be a lot of, I don't want to use the word confusion, but lack of clarity going back and forth. And I feel like this is something that we could take up at a future meeting. But right now, we're not going to hash it all out right now at 8:30 at night. But please, I do want to see this figured out and brought back to the board. Give us some final clarity.
And then
Executive Director.
I will definitely have Ken be present at those meetings as well, because we did, all my correspondence points back to Ken's memo as
Right,
well.
it does.
And it wasn't that I told her it was okay. We always come back to our attorneys and how the interpretation of that agreement. So we'll be more than happy to schedule those meetings again.
Please,
so that
yes.
we're all clear with Mr. McCormick as well there. So
my question to that would be, would the terms still be the same? Because we have a contract and the contract is written for what, up until May 26th? Well, again, I still don't even know what direction, because they was like 45 days each person. I emailed both of them. So I don't know, like, is it 45 days from you guys and then the city starts their 45 days, or?
again, you'll probably have to contact Chris at the city for that, because I don't know the terms of the SHIP program.
Looking at getting this rectified as far as the terms.
I can give Ken a call tomorrow to see what his availability is. If you can give me several times, so tomorrow or the next day, we can get you the resolution from our end within the next couple of days.
All right, thank you. I believe we have concluded this item and we look forward to hearing more follow-up in our next meeting. Now, we did not pull any items from 15 with the exception of D. Before we close out tonight, and I'll entertain a motion to adjourn, I do want to disclose that I did have a brief conversation with Anthony Barber. He was on his way out from his meeting with TWE. Out of an abundance of caution, I just want to disclose that I did have that conversation. No, we didn't have any substantial conversation, but I'd rather be safe. All right, if there's anything else, may I have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
We have a motion from Vice Chair, a second from Board Member Hay. Nothing else from my colleagues? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, the motion passes. This meeting is adjourned. Have a good night.
Have a good night. That wasn't too bad.